The clock read 12:42 a.m., and the faint hum of the ceiling fan whispered through the darkness of my bedroom. I was barely drifting into sleep, the stillness of the house amplified by Mark's absence. He was away for a conference in Chicago, leaving me alone in our suburban Connecticut home with our son, Alex. The night felt heavier than usual, as though the shadows themselves carried secrets. My subconscious barely registered the faint creak of the bedroom door. Groggily, I thought it might be Mark returning early, or perhaps the dog exploring. But the silhouette framed in the dim hallway light wasn't Mark or our golden retriever. It was Alex. Alex. I mumbled, my voice gravelly from sleep. "What's wrong, darling?" He hesitated, his lanky frame shifting uncomfortably in the doorway. The hesitation was unlike him. My 16-year-old was usually straightforward, even blunt, when something bothered him. Tonight, though, his silence carried an unfamiliar weight. "I couldn't sleep," he murmured at last, his voice barely above a whisper. I needed to talk to you." I patted the edge of the bed, signaling for him to sit down. Instead of the casual plop I expected, he moved cautiously, his eyes darting to the window as though the shadows might be listening. His face, illuminated by the faint streetlight outside, was a canvas of conflicting emotions: fear, sadness, and something I couldn't quite place. "What is it, honey?" I asked, my concern growing with each passing second. He sat down, fidgeting with the edge of his sweatshirt. "I need you to promise me something, Mom. Promise you won't be mad." My heart skipped a beat. That was never a good prelude to any conversation. "Alex, just tell me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." He finally met my gaze, his hazel eyes brimming with unspoken pain. I think someone's watching me." For a moment, I thought I misheard him. "Watching you? What do you mean?" His voice trembled. "There's this car, a black SUV. It's been outside the school every day for the past 2 weeks. And today, I saw it parked outside our house." The words landed like a punch to the chest. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. "Did you tell anyone? A teacher? The school counselor?" "No," he said quickly. "What if it's nothing?" I didn't want to make a big deal, but it doesn't feel like nothing anymore. Before I could respond, the faint vibration of my phone on the nightstand broke the tension. I reached for it, frowning at the unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello?" A deep, gravelly voice greeted me. "You should listen to your son." The line went dead. My hand trembled as I lowered the phone. Alex's wide eyes mirrored my own panic. I wanted to reassure him, tell him it was a prank or a mistake. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. Suddenly, the house felt suffocating. Every creak, every rustle became a potential threat. I locked the bedroom door, my mind racing. Who would be watching my son? And why? "Mom," Alex said, breaking the silence. "There's more." My breath caught. "More?" He nodded, his face pale. "Last week, I found this in my locker." He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The edges were crumpled, as though he had handled it too many times. I unfolded it, my stomach churning as I read the jagged, scrawled handwriting. "Secrets don't stay buried forever." The rest of the night passed in a blur of paranoia and restless pacing. At 2:30 a.m., I called Mark, waking him from what sounded like a deep sleep. His initial grogginess quickly turned to alarm when I recounted the night's events. "Do you think we should call the police?" I asked, gripping the phone tightly. "Not yet," he said after a pause. "It could be a prank, but keep Alex home tomorrow. I'll book an earlier flight back." By the time the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I was physically and emotionally drained. But Alex's troubles didn't end there. As I poured him a bowl of cereal, his phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, his face draining of color as he read the message. "What is it?" I demanded. He turned the screen toward me. The message was short but chilling. "Time's running out, Alex." That afternoon, as Alex stayed glued to the couch with a movie playing in the background, I went into full-on detective mode. I combed through his social media, searching for any clues. A recent message caught my eye. A direct message from a girl named Emily, someone I hadn't heard him mention before. The message was odd. "Can we talk? I think we're both in trouble." I confronted Alex, who turned red with embarrassment. "She's just someone I met online," he muttered, refusing to elaborate further. But something about Emily didn't sit right. Her profile was sparse, her photos generic. I decided to dig deeper, and with a little sleuthing, I discovered her profile had been created just 3 weeks ago. A cold chill ran down my spine. By the time Mark returned home that evening, I had pieced together fragments of a puzzle I didn't fully understand. The black SUV had returned during the day, this time idling down the street for over an hour. I called the non-emergency police line, only to be told they couldn't act without a direct threat. Mark, ever the rational one, suggested installing cameras around the house, but I wasn't convinced that was enough. I spent most of the evening staring out the window, half expecting someone to come bursting through the door. At precisely 11:47 p.m., the doorbell rang. Mark and I exchanged a nervous glance before he went to answer it. When he opened the door, no one was there. Only a plain white envelope resting on the welcome mat. Inside was a photograph. It was of Alex, taken that very afternoon as he sat on the couch. On the back, a single sentence was scrawled. "You should have told him the truth." To be continued. The envelope weighed heavy in my hands, though it was just paper and a photograph. Mark stood beside me, his face set in a grim mask as he stared at the picture of Alex on the couch. The implications of that photograph sent chills down my spine. Someone had been watching us. Not just Alex, but all of us. "I'm calling the police," Mark said, his voice clipped. "Wait," I interrupted, grabbing his arm. "If this is tied to what Alex told me last night, we need to understand what's going on first. Whoever this is, they know something we don't." Mark hesitated, but relented. He closed the door and locked it before pulling me aside. "We need to talk to Alex. Now." Alex was in his room, staring blankly at his computer screen. When we entered, he looked up, his expression a mix of fear and guilt. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice trembling. Mark handed him the photograph. Alex's face went pale as he took it in. They were here?" His voice cracked, panic bubbling up. "Alex," Mark said gently, sitting beside him on the bed. "We need to know everything. No more half-truths. Whatever this is, it's serious." Alex hesitated, his hands gripping the edge of the bed so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I don't know everything," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think it's because of Dad." Mark and I froze, exchanging a sharp glance. "What does that mean?" I asked. Alex swallowed hard, his eyes darting to Mark before landing back on me. "About 2 months ago, I got this message on Instagram. It was from some random account, no followers, no posts. They said they had information about you and Dad, something I needed to know." Mark's expression darkened. "What did you say?" "I ignored it at first," Alex admitted. "But then they sent me pictures." "What kind of pictures?" I pressed, my heart racing. Alex hesitated, his hands trembling as he pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his messages before holding it out to us. The images weren't of him. They were of Mark. In one, he was leaving an upscale restaurant, arm in arm with a woman I didn't recognize. In another, he was entering a hotel lobby with her. My stomach dropped. I turned to Mark, my voice shaking. "What the hell is this?" "It's not what it looks like," he said quickly, his face turning pale. "I can explain later." I snapped. "Right now, we need to focus on Alex." Mark clamped his mouth shut, his jaw tightening. Alex continued, his voice quivering. "They told me I had to keep quiet, that if I told you, they'd hurt us. I didn't know what to do. But then I started noticing the car, the notes. I think they're trying to scare us." "Who's they?" Mark asked, his voice sharp. Alex shook his head. "I don't know, but whoever it is, they know everything." The next day, we installed cameras around the house and alerted the school about the black SUV. The police took a report but offered little help, citing the lack of concrete threats. Mark and I barely spoke. The tension between us was palpable. Alex stayed home, his fear growing with each passing hour. By evening, things took an even darker turn. As we reviewed the camera footage, one clip caught our attention. At 3:12 p.m., the black SUV appeared at the end of the street. A figure emerged, wearing a hoodie pulled low over their face. They didn't approach the house but stood there, staring at it for nearly 10 minutes before getting back in the car and driving off. "I'm done waiting," I said, slamming the laptop shut. "Mark, you need to come clean. If this is tied to you, we need to know now." Mark looked away, his jaw working as though he were chewing on the truth. Finally, he sighed, sinking into the couch. "It's not what you think. Yes, I met someone. Her name's Rachel. We had a thing, years ago. Before Alex was born." My mind reeled. "You cheated on me?" "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. "We were going through a rough patch. I didn't think we'd make it, but it ended before it really began, and I never saw her again. I didn't think it mattered anymore." "Didn't think it mattered?" I hissed, my voice rising. Clearly, someone disagrees. Mark buried his face in his hands. "I don't know how they found out. Rachel's dead. She died in a car accident 10 years ago." His words hit me like a brick. Dead? Then who was behind this? And why now? That night, sleep was impossible. I lay awake, my mind spinning with questions and half-formed theories. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard a soft knock at the bedroom door. It was Alex. "Mom," he whispered, his face pale. "There's someone outside." My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone and followed Alex to his room. Peeking through the blinds, I saw a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the yard. They were holding something, a piece of paper. Mark joined us, his face ashen. "Stay here," he ordered, grabbing the baseball but he kept in the closet. "I'll handle this." "No," I hissed, grabbing his arm. "We call the police. Now." But before we could act, the figure dropped the paper and disappeared into the darkness. Mark cautiously retrieved the note while I called 911. When he returned, his face was grim. The note read, "Lies always catch up with you. It's time Alex knows the truth." By the time the police arrived, the figure was long gone. They promised to increase patrols in the area, but it was clear we were on our own. Alex was shaken but refused to go back to bed. He sat in the living room, clutching his knees to his chest. "Mom," he said softly, "do you know what they mean? What truth?" I hesitated, my throat dry. "No, honey, I don't." But I lied. Deep down, I knew the truth Mark hadn't admitted. Something about Rachel's death didn't add up. And I had a feeling the answers were closer than I wanted them to be. To be continued. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, a perfect reflection of the weight hanging over the house. Mark and I hadn't spoken much since the night before, and Alex had retreated into his room, refusing to come out. I stared at the note left by the shadowy figure. The words burned into my mind. "Lies always catch up with you. It's time Alex knows the truth." But what truth? My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at Maplewood Park. Noon. Alone." The police had been useless so far, and I didn't trust them to intervene effectively. Against my better judgment, I decided to go. At precisely 12 p.m., I arrived at the park, the winter chill biting through my coat. The playground was deserted, the swings creaking in the wind. A figure sat on a bench near the edge of the woods, their back to me. As I approached, my breath caught in my throat. The figure turned, a man, mid-30s, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. He looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place him. "You're late," he said, his voice flat. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this to my family?" He smiled coldly, pulling a photograph from his pocket. He handed it to me without a word. My heart stopped when I saw it. It was a photo of Mark, Rachel, and a baby. A baby that wasn't Alex. What is this?" I stammered. The man's expression darkened. "That's me. Your husband is my father. I stumbled back, the edges of my vision blurring. No, that's impossible. Oh, it's very possible, he said, standing. Rachel was my mother. Mark left her when she got pregnant with me. Said he couldn't jeopardize his marriage. She raised me on her own until she died in that car crash. And then he just disappeared from my life. Until now. I clutched the photo, my hands shaking. Why come after Alex? He's just a kid. Because, the man spat, his eyes blazing. Alex is the golden child. The one who got everything I was denied. A family. A father. A life without secrets. I struggled to process his words, but one thing was clear. He was dangerous. What do you want from us? I whispered. He leaned in, his voice low and venomous. I want Mark to pay. I want him to feel the pain my mother and I felt. And Alex? He deserves to know what kind of man his father really is. Back at home, Mark was waiting for me, his face drawn. Where have you been? I threw the photo at him. Explain this. Mark's face drained of color as he picked up the picture. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter. I snapped. Why didn't you tell me? About Rachel. About your son. I didn't know he existed, Mark said weakly. Rachel never told me she was pregnant. I swear, I had no idea. And now he's here, I said, my voice trembling with rage. He's been watching us, threatening Alex. He blames you for abandoning him. Mark sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I made mistakes, okay? But I didn't abandon anyone. If I had known, save it, I interrupted. We need to figure out how to protect Alex. He's not safe with this man around. That night, the tension was unbearable. Alex finally emerged from his room, his face pale and exhausted. What's going on? He asked, his voice small. Mark and I exchanged a look. We couldn't keep him in the dark any longer. Alex, I began, sitting him down. There's something we need to tell you. Over the next hour, we laid everything out. The affair, Rachel, and the son Mark never knew he had. Alex listened in stunned silence, his expression shifting from confusion to anger to something I couldn't quite place. So, I have a brother, he said finally. Yes, Mark said quietly. And he hates us, Alex added, his voice tinged with bitterness. He's angry, I corrected, but we'll handle it. I promise, we won't let him hurt you. Alex nodded, but his eyes held a hardness I'd never seen before. 2 days later, the man struck again. This time, it wasn't a note or a photograph. It was a fire. I woke in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke and the blaring of the fire alarm. Flames licked at the back porch, spreading rapidly toward the house. Mark and I scrambled to get Alex and the dog out as the fire consumed the patio furniture and part of the kitchen. By the time the fire department arrived, the damage was extensive. The police confirmed what I already suspected. It was arson. We can't stay here, I told Mark as we stood outside, watching the firefighters douse the flames. I know, he said grimly. The next morning, Alex was gone. He left a note on his bed. I'm going to fix this. Don't follow me. Panic set in immediately. I called his phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. I think he went to find him, I told Mark, my voice shaking. Mark nodded. I think you're right. We found them at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Alex was standing in the middle of the room, facing his half-brother, whose name we learned was Nathan. You don't have to do this, Alex was saying as we entered. Whatever you think Dad owes you, taking it out on me won't fix anything. Nathan laughed bitterly. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about him. It's about you. The perfect son. The one who got everything I didn't. Mark stepped forward. Nathan, stop. This isn't the way. Nathan turned, his face twisted with rage. You don't get to tell me what to do. Not anymore. For a moment, I thought he might hurt Alex. But then Alex did something that surprised us all. He stepped closer to Nathan, holding out his phone. You want to destroy him? Fine. Tell your story. Post it online. Expose him for what he is. But leave us out of it. Nathan hesitated, his anger wavering. Finally, he took the phone, his expression unreadable. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low. Then he turned and walked away. In the weeks that followed, we tried to rebuild our home, our lives, and the trust between us. Nathan's story did make its way online, sparking a wave of sympathy for him and outrage at Mark. Alex, however, seemed stronger. He had faced the truth about his father and come out on the other side. As for Nathan, he disappeared, leaving behind only the echoes of the chaos he had caused. But every so often, I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for the right moment to return. Some secrets never truly stay buried.